Welcome to Rebeeca Sounds Reveille. Today on the show, I have a special guest. I'm super excited because he and I go back a couple of years when I was doing radio. He is an amazing author and writer, and he has such a forward focus on what needs to get out there, both to children and adults. He lives to write, and he does so from his cottage at the edge of this magical forest in Athens, Greece. When he is not composing just epic fantasies, he goes on chatting with friends, he takes his dog for a walk, he has colleagues that he spends his time with, along with his family and his animals at home. So I'll let him tell you a little bit more about that. He has developed a book and published it and been very successful. It is called Runaway Smile. It has won the Gillette Burgess Children's Book Award, amongst other distinctions, and it is available on Amazon. You can find out more in the article that's related to our TV show. And he has a number of other books as well, and I'd like him to have him share that with you because this is his passion, and I'm super excited about the things that he has done and, again, where he's going. So without any further ado, my guest, Nicholas Rossis, welcome.
Hi, Rebecca. Lovely to see you again.
I know. I am just delighted to be able to talk with you again because the last time we spoke, there was so much passion in the things that you had to share. That's back when I was doing Vote Program Radio, and we were talking about how different things impact people. And so now I know, I've been watching you on Twitter, I know you have been just doing a million things. So let's start with sharing how you got started in writing and give our viewers a little bit of background about who you are and why you started writing, especially the children's books.
Well, I didn't start actually with the children's books. I did start with fantasy. Something that I've now discovered is actually science fiction fantasy instead of epic fantasy, as I always thought.
Okay, okay. We learn as we go.
Well, indeed, indeed.
We do.
It's funny how these things change. Subgenres appear and disappear all the time. It's sometimes I liken writing books and self-publishing and publishing in all this world like a building on quicksand, because everything changes so fast that you just can't stand still for a moment, or everything's going to disappear. It's weird, but it's lovely and it's exciting and it's brilliant. I started, well, it's a bit of a funny story really, because I started writing when I was like 17 or 18. And I had a career counselor, and I showed her my work, which is a short story, and she said, "You should be an engineer."
You're kidding.
No.
So what was your response to that?
I became an engineer.
You became an engineer. Okay.
So the funny thing, this was a family friend actually, and once Runaway Smile was published, somehow she came across it and she bought it. And then out of the blue, I mean, I hadn't spoken to this woman in like 25 years, and she gives me a call, and she finds out what a phone number is, and she gives me a call. And she says, "Nicholas, I'm so happy you decided to become a writer. You're so born to do this, and it's obvious that you're going to succeed in it because your book is just excellent. I love your book." And I was like, "You don't even remember that I became an engineer because of you now, do you?"
And what was your first thought when you heard that?
Thank God I didn't listen to you.
And that's a reveille right there. Don't always listen to what you hear. Yes, wake up. Know your instincts, right?
Indeed, and have the guts to follow your gut, I suppose. So the next thing she told me actually was even funnier, because she said, "And you know that you wrote this book, and it's about the moral of the story, according to her anyway, was that if you don't have a mother's love, you become a criminal," or something like that, as weird as that. And my book is nothing like that. So I was like, okay, that's not what I had in mind. And then she was like, That's weird. Obviously, you don't know what you've written.
So after that, did you find that there were people who interpreted your book a little bit differently than what you had intended?
That was the first hint that something like that is happening.
Right, right.
And ever since, people have been asking, what is the moral of the book? And I'm like, I don't know. It depends on what you make out of it, because I've realized that everybody, not just my book, everybody reads something different out of any book they come across.
They do.
I suppose, especially if you think of all the religions, say the Bible, we have one book and we have like a gazillion religions coming out of it. And yes, that's not just my book that has a problem.
The matter of perception is very important, especially for a writer. And from moving forward from there, did you begin to think a little bit more in depth about what you were writing and how it might be perceived then?
Not really.
So you just felt your passion and just let it flow.
I like to think so. I like to think that I'm not writing. It's a big question, isn't it? Are we writing for our readers or are we writing for ourselves? And I'd like to think that there is a sweet spot where you respect your reader. So you write in a way that it's going to be as accessible. That your thought is going to be as accessible as you can. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, not betraying your thought because of how it's going to be perceived or because of fear of how it's going to be perceived. And I strive to reach that sweet spot where I write what I want, but in a way that I can make it clear that this is what I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
And usually, since I work with metaphors, it's not like a self-help book, in which case you can just say, okay, this is what I'm trying to tell you people.
Right.
When you write news stories in particular, that's a very strange thing to do, especially since children's books are going to be read by parents and by children of different age.
Very true.
Absolutely. I'm thinking of Little Prince here. It's a book that I love to read, even today. I mean, to this day, I love reading Little Prince. And of course, it means something completely different to what it did when I was 10 years old.
Isn't that amazing, though?
Ah, that's beautiful. Yes, it's amazing.
It is. And you have a beautiful story about how you came about to write this particular book.
Runaway Smile, you mean?
Yes.
I had the idea and I ran it across an illustrator friend. So he said, okay, let's do this. And he started showing me some pictures that he would sketch out. And that's pretty much how it came across. I don't know if you remember another story or if that story has changed.
Well, and you had talked about your grandmother and
yes,
at one time. And I know that there was a connection there. And I think that family plays a huge role in our development, and that will eventually maybe sort of make its way to paper sometimes.
The story that you remember, yes, you're absolutely right. The story that you remember is I had discussed the traumas and how traumas end up coming out to the surface, whatever we do, because they become part of who we are. And this particular trauma was particularly weird in the sense that it didn't happen to me. It happened to my grandmother who lost a child in an assault. What it was, because she was walking in the middle of the street in Kofi, which is like an idyllic place where people would go to have a lovely time. And even today, that's what it is. It's a wonderful holiday resort. And she was walking in the middle of the street and somebody came along and had a pair of scissors and killed her child. That was a shocking thing. Obviously, that's a shocking thing, period. But if you think of the, again, idyllic setting, it makes it just so much harder to comprehend, let alone deal with.
Yes, yes.
My grandma was an amazing woman because she managed somehow to find the strength to forgive this person, which to this day, I don't know how she did it. I don't know if I could do it. I mean, I have a 14-month-old little girl, and I know that I would just go crazy if anything happened to her. And she not only managed to have another 3 children after that, but she managed to confront this person after he had been apprehended and jailed, and to ask him why he did it. I mean, to sit down with this person and have a rational dialogue, it just astounds me.
Mm-hmm.
Dan said that it was not his fault in a sense. He was just damaged, which shows such a level of understanding that just, again, I can't understand it. I can't begin to understand how this woman found the strength to do what she did, but she managed to do it.
Mm-hmm. Forgiveness is huge for trauma. And when you're bringing children into the mix, sometimes they can't understand things. And then there is an author who has a book such as yours that can take that child's mind and attention away from a situation that they don't really know how to process. So that's one of your many books. And let's talk about some of the others that you have. And let's move forward from right after you published that one.
After that one was another host of books, short stories, actually. I love short stories. And I've now published 4 collections of them. I also just finished Persis, which is my sci-fi fantasy book, which now consists of 5 books, and I think that was the end of it. Although some big fans, namely my dad, is pushing me to continue writing Persis, because she's like, I need to find out what happens. I'm like, Dad, I told you what happens. That's the end. That's the end of the story. No, I'm sure there's more to tell.
There has to be more.
Okay. So I think it's the final book, but I don't know. And another children's book, which was Musicville. And again, Musicville, I loved writing because with the illustrator friend that I mentioned before, it all came because of one of his ideas. He once came to me and said, I'd love to draw animals that are musical instruments. And I said, so animals playing musical instruments? No, he said, animals that are musical instruments. So that got the ball rolling somehow. And I came up with a story about a village that consists of animals that are musical instruments. So you've got, instead of rhinoceroses, you've got somebody who is a rhinoceros, but also has a maraca instead of the horn.
Aha.
He's Maracerus. Animals like that. It was such fun writing it, and even more fun illustrating, I suppose, for Dimitri. But I managed somehow to tie it in with everything that's been happening in our world and the politics and all that.
Oh my gosh, I am so glad that you said that, because that was something that had just come to mind. And I'd like to see if you can elaborate a little bit more on that, because since we've spoke over the last couple of years, many things have transpired. And here we go. Shout out. Tell me how it's relating, because I've got to tell you, there are a lot of people who are really having some challenges with dealing both in their own communities along with world events. So I think that this would be very apropos.
Well, the premise of the story is that you have this village where everybody's a different musical instrument. So everybody plays their own music. The thing is, if you do that, then there's just racket, there's discord, there's chaos. So they don't mind until somehow all this noise attracts rats, and they start eating away at the foundation of their homes. So the houses are starting to fall, and buildings are demolished one after another. They don't know what's happening. It's like an earthquake. They're shocked, and they are panicked. And out of all this, Maracerus, who's the protagonist, the hero, says, this all happens because we don't know how to play music together. So we should all start writing a symphony. And symphony comes from the Greek word, which means agreement. So we should find a way to live with each other, find a way to complement each other's music instead of antagonizing each other's music. And that's pretty much the model as far as I'm concerned. You're free to read whatever you want in it, obviously.
Well, no, I think that that's really important. And I also think that as adults, we tend to shy away from children's book because we think that they're more applicable to little kids and they're just a fast story, something like that. But the depth of what that you're sharing right now with our viewers is really important, because even something that is directed for children is very applicable into our lives right now. And we do forget how to live in harmony sometimes. And there's just been so much chaos. You've had different movements that have created a lot of different rioting, and people are going home and they're feeling frustrated and angry and confused with different things. But taking ourselves back to something very, very simple in living where we can think about the other person and what they're feeling, what they're thinking is super important, because it's not all about me, even though our society has come to a point where everything seems to be what's in it for me. And so this is really great to talk about a children's book that really can open our vision and our perception to the events that are unfolding now and from here forward. So speaking of which, did you or have you been seeing much going on in the area where you're at?
Oh, well, Greece is a bit of a bellwether for the whole world, isn't it?
It is.
And we were the first to reject the elites, if you like, a few years ago. First with the right government that was very much, well, it did follow a lot of populist policies, I'm afraid to say, and then a left government that took on the baton, and they just carried on doing exactly the same thing. So now we are experiencing a sort of backlash against that. People are starting to say, okay, maybe this was not the solution. Maybe rejection was not the answer. So I guess in a sense we are maybe a decade ahead of everybody else. But we have to wait what happens.
That's a good platform to learn from. When something doesn't go the way that we say that it's intended to, there are other solutions, and sometimes we do have to backtrack a little bit. And many people, this comes to the part of forgiveness. They don't want to forgive that someone has made a mistake or an entity has made a mistake. But that hasn't stopped your writing. And I have to tell you, though, the reason I asked is because you live in a cottage. We don't, for me, perception, okay, it allows me to envision this prairie-like area with green grass growing and one little cottage. You know, and maybe I have that imagery from a children's book that I grew up with or something. But in essence, you're in Athens. So it's a major area, and of course you are going to see those things. So has this affected your writing or any type of literary competitions, awards, or has the writing industry been able to remain pretty steadfast?
That's a lot of things to discuss. So let me just start.
Yeah.
Let's just start with one thing you said that really caught my attention. It's about forgiveness that you mentioned. I think the important thing is to remember that the other person is neither out to harm you, they're not out to get you, they're not out to cause you any sort of harm. They're out saying what they say and believing what they believe because they genuinely feel that's for the best. For the best personal interest, but also because for the best of their country, the best of you, in a sense. And genuinely, I think that everybody wants to do what's best. So I believe in the good in people. I do believe that. In Socrates used to say that nobody is knowingly evil. And I'm a very firm fan of that sort of thinking. I don't think that people knowingly can be evil. I think that people can be stupid, yes. People can make mistakes. We all do. But we don't start out our day saying, today I'm going to be really evil. Let's see what's the most evil thing I can do. And then run over puppies or something, unless you're really a very dangerous person to be around. So I think that's where forgiveness comes in. If you can start change your mindset from this sort of antagonistical thinking into something more accommodating, that, okay, you have your point of view and I have to respect that because it's your point of view. You have as much right in your opinion as I do and as everybody does. I think you're already halfway towards meeting the other person. And
I agree with you. Really understanding that people do have different belief systems. They come from different cultures, and forgiveness is huge. I would hope that people would forgive me for some mistake that I've made or for a viewpoint that is different from theirs, not because I intend to hurt them in a word or an action, but simply because I don't know that it might be offensive. And with a lot of the other things, big movements that have been going on here in the United States, I agree with you in that forgiveness is a huge component of really beginning to move forward, but also education, because you can't really forgive until you get into a place where you understand that the person is different and kind of deciphering what that is. And so very, very interesting that you had brought that up in reference to your book, because again, a lot of times we don't correlate how something so directed maybe at children can be so applicable to our own personal lives. And sometimes we have to just kind of step back and say, I really need to look at a situation from a child's point of view. And then we can begin to move forward. So I really like that you brought that up. Oh, and so let's move forward. You've got a lot going on, and I definitely want to make sure that we cover all of the different things that you have done and where you're going, because you are a fantastic writer. You have won many awards. And so as we move forward, I do want you to share the awards that you've received for the books that you have published. Very, very important.
You didn't mention the Gellert Burgess one, which is that was a gold award for Smile. Then it's won another 2 awards. Musical won 1 award a month ago. I was very happy about that, because it was its first award, and the poor thing had been laying in the shadow of its older brother and been suffering that book envy that you can imagine.
Congratulations!
Thank you.
This is fantastic.
And one of my collections of short stories was voted one of the 50 best indie books of 2015. So that was another big thing.
Oh, fantastic. This is so awesome. Oh my goodness.
And some other awards, actually, I'm afraid I don't remember them, but it's been, people have been reacting rather well to the books, which is incredibly flattering, I have to say, because when somebody had likened writing a book and publishing a book to running naked in the middle of the square of a village, shouting, "Look at me, look at me."
It's not all that. It is not all like that, because it takes a lot to get the attention of a book. There's a lot of writers now, and especially in the digital age, you have a lot of people doing self-publishing, blogging, so on and so forth. And so to win something with that distinction is quite an honor.
Thank you. Okay, so it's a very crowded town square, but still the metaphor in the sense that we're all shouting, "Look at me," and we're all naked. And you just can't write, as far as I'm concerned, you can't write in any other way. You can't write keeping your clothes on, metaphorically speaking, of course.
Sure.
Because it gets quite cold here, despite what So you might think that, yeah, I can pretend, in a sense, while writing a book, but you can't. Your true self will shine through no matter what you do, no matter how much you try to self-censor what you're writing, to pretend you might be something else.
Not going to happen.
Things are going to slip through the cracks.
Mm-hmm.
True self is always going to shine through while you're writing.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that fascinating, to be honest. I love that. But writing is, as far as I'm concerned, it's the best sort of therapy you could have.
I agree with you. And I think that journaling is important too. It is such a good therapy. But talk to me a little bit about Persis.
Persis is, I'm very fond of it, actually. It was based on Herodotus' story of how Cyrus, king of the Persians, came to be and came to invade Greece. So it was written, it pretty much follows the story arc. But like I said, my own interests pretty soon started showing through. And I couldn't help but adding things like metaphysical thing, like philosophy, like religion, like a lot of politics, and a lot of questions about justice, because I've been thinking a lot about justice lately. And in the final book, I have this chapter that's pretty much dedicated to what role justice plays in our world, especially when you have on one hand justice and on the other hand love and forgiveness. So justice appeals to us because we live in a world that's very just in a sense. I believe very strongly in karma. The whole karma
Uh-huh.
is very much, I've seen it happen so many times that I can't help but believe completely in it. But at the same time, I also believe in the power of forgiveness. And I think that's the one thing that trumps justice.
Uh-huh.
And compassion and love.
Because
So
at that point, you can actually let something go. Sometimes justice can be served, but if you don't forgive, you're still holding on to the chains within you. So something that is really important, forgiveness, is also for you and not just for the other person. But this is also applicable to then again with what's going on now.
it's very much applicable. I think it's applicable to any period in history, no matter when you live,
Uh-huh.
it's applicable to what you're going through. Just because forgiveness is such a misunderstood term. And I think people, they hear you have to forgive because it's a very Christian thing to do, for example.
Right.
Whereas, as far as I'm concerned, that's not the point at all. You need to forgive to free yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you're a slave to your hatred, to your fear, to your anger. And as long as you hold these emotions within you, you are a prisoner. You're a prisoner to these emotions, and there's no way to free yourself except for forgiveness. So as far as I'm concerned, that's the real power of forgiveness. It has nothing to do with you saving your soul or whatever. That's the power of forgiveness.
And so then, in essence, really, if you're not forgiving and you don't practice forgiveness, justice really isn't being served because you're
Wow.
imprisoned.
Yes, you're imprisoning yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So even if the other person suffers the results of their ill deeds, whatever that might be,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that's justice in that sense.
So, with knowing your genres and the age groups that you have written for, what do you think would be the best, I don't know, age or span of ages to begin teaching forgiveness? Or do you think that it can be taught?
Yes, I honestly think can be taught. And I think that's what all the major religions have been trying to do
Mm-hmm.
for millennia, not just centuries. But I
Mm-hmm.
think it's such a hard message to penetrate into our soul because, like I said, justice, this is a just world in a lot of ways, and justice appeals to us. It has an instant appeal. We suffer, we need somebody else to suffer. We experience pain, we need somebody else to experience pain. It's a need, it's very organic. And to be able to interrupt the flow of that emotion and to step in with love and compassion and say, there is a better way, I think that has to be taught. There is no other way because it's also organic, but it's like a whisper compared to a shout.
Uh-huh.
So the other day I had this thought. I thought, no, come to think of it, all major truths, all big truths, they're not shouted, they're whispered. And
Oh,
the whisper is so much stronger than a shout, and that's how it should be.
that is so powerful. That is so powerful. Now, Persis is geared towards what age groups?
Mostly adults.
Mostly
And
adults. And is this epic or sci-fi? Is this the epic
well,
sci? What genre are we looking at
I'll
with
tell you
this?
the premise and you can decide for yourself because the idea is that you have this band of people, about 5,000 people that have crash landed on a remote planet in the future. So that's the year 2099. And 300 years later, I examined what has happened to these people. So they've built civilizations that are remarkably close to ancient Greece, hence the Herodotus angle.
Excellent.
But at the same time, they do have some remnants of the old technology that brought them there. So they do have things like Kindles, if you like, which are called e.
Okay.
And there are these factions. One faction is against technology because technology has caused all this damage and it brought them there and it left them stranded. So they hate technology, they hate knowledge, they believe that they have a very romantic, if you like, notion of how things should work. and at the same time, a very scary notion of how things should work.
Yes, yes. I'm just sitting here at the edge of my seat thinking, no knowledge.
Well, no books, nothing like that, because it's dangerous. And you have the other side of things, the other people that are pro-democracy, of course, because when you have knowledge, you can't help but have democracy.
Uh-huh.
As generations of people have realized. And inevitably there's war. So somebody said that it's fantasy if you have people on horseback, and it's science fiction if you have people riding tanks and stuff. So I have people on horsebacks, but they're holding lightsabers. So I'm like, so what is this that I've written?
Where does this fall? Yes, I love it.
So I came across this term, science fiction fantasy, sci-fi fantasy, and I was like, yes, that's it. That has to be it. So it's being rebranded as sci-fi fantasy.
I love it. I love it. And so now we have sequels.
Sequels?
Is sequels to Persis, or is the
it's now 5 books, so it's
I see. Okay.
That's a lot of books.
Maybe I'm just hoping.
For a number 6. Well, you and my dad, it seems, but thank you.
Yes.
It was so funny. I don't know if I told you this last time, but when I wrote the first book, the first Persis was the first thing that I ever self-published. And I finished the manuscript and I gave it to him to read. So he looked at it and he was like, oh, okay, thanks, son. And 3 months passed. 3 months. No. 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months passed. And in the meantime, I would ask him, so what happened to that manuscript? And he was like, I've got to get around to it. I'm reading Game of Thrones at the moment, so don't bug me about it. It's like, okay, fine. Weird reaction.
Uh-huh.
One evening, out of the blue, it was 9 or 10 o'clock in the evening, and he called me up and said, you know what this guy's son did? He took ancient history and he put it in the future. It was a great read. I really enjoyed it. Dad, hang on. When you say this guy, who are you talking about?
Right.
And he said, I have no idea. There was no name on the manuscript. I have no clue what it was.
So you said, Dad, that's my book.
Yes, that's what I said. When I stopped laughing, I said, that was me, Dad. That was my book that you wrote, that you read, sorry. And he said, when did you become a writer?
Oh, did he not know that you had a passion for writing?
He never thought that I would publish anything, so that's different things. The only thing that until then was just a couple of short stories in magazines. So for me to write a whole novel was, a very novel thing to do.
I love it. And so from there, you just continue to write, and you are doing other things now as well, correct?
One thing I'm doing is a lot of book marketing, for one thing.
Yes.
I own an internet company which deals with internet marketing. So that proved to be incredibly useful when it came to publishing, which I couldn't. The irony is, of course, I started writing to escape from that side of things.
Oh, that is ironic.
And then I found out that it was the most useful thing that I could ever hope to have dealt with, to have invested my time in. So I do a lot of book marketing. I do a lot of my own books and friends' books, and I blog a lot about it. So I've written about 800 posts, and most of them are about book marketing and how to successfully differentiate yourself from everybody else out there. Because at the moment, there are some 6,000 books published every day on Amazon.
6,000?
That's the latest number I came across, yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's a lot.
Right, so yes.
That's a lot of, in that grouping of 6,000, a lot of those that are self-publishing as well. And the biggest challenge I think that a self-publisher faces is the marketing aspect.
Absolutely.
And so you have honed in on this, and you've done very well.
Thank you.
So
it's very flattering and very strange to see yourself. Amazon had this author rank. And it's strange to see yourself when you run a successful promotion, for example. You will climb and become maybe in the top 1,000 science fiction writers worldwide. And that's just weird. You're like, Is it me you're talking about? You
I
can't be.
love
You're
it.
kidding me, right?
I love it. That
It's
is
like,
absolutely incredible. Now, do you find yourself in, you don't have to mention this. I know I would, just because I would, seeing it for the first time would absolutely amaze me if I had numbers like that. But at that point, I would be wanting to begin to monitor that and go, okay, is it going up? And then after that, begin, or maybe in conjunction, start going, okay, is there anything else I need to do to continue to do this? Because at one time, an author's work wasn't really famous, if you will, or displaying notoriety until after they had passed away. And in the age that we live in, that is absolutely not the case anymore. So to continue to be able to get your message and your stories out to readers and your novels and the ideas that you have and share, you've got to continue to market, because now what I'm hearing with 6,000 a day on Amazon alone, this is a huge number, and you've got to stay in the game. You've got to continue to make yourself known in the industry of writing. And so if you are going to give, well, maybe you shouldn't share your tip and you can pass on, but could you give at least a small tidbit to someone who's new into the marketing arena after self-publishing on something that would be useful to them?
Well, like I said, I've published a few hundred posts on exactly that subject, so I'm more than happy to share my tips. That's what I live to do. My blog is titled Nicholas Rossis, writer, award-winning writer, I think, and protector of dreams. And I love that side of things. That I like to think myself as somebody who helps others realize their dreams. And I couldn't be happier when somebody I'm trying to help succeeds in making their book #1.
I agree with you. Helping others is something I have a passion for as well, so I can relate to that wholeheartedly. And it's not something that anything that I do I hold dearly to my heart that's so secretive, because when you do give and you assist, it's such a blessing to the community, but yourself. You feel so good about seeing someone else succeed, and I know you do, because I know you. And you have been a fantastic supporter of my work as well, and I just can't thank you enough for that. What are you going to be doing, or can you give us an idea if there's any more works coming your way? I think I hear another sequel, I'm telling you.
Well, before I answer that, let me give you one tip that I promised to give you, because otherwise people are going to think, oh, right, so he never did it. Sure, he gives us a good talk about helping others, but when it came down to it, no tip whatsoever.
Okay, so, excellent.
The one tip that is quite hot at the moment is Amazon Marketing Services. And you need to find out how to make this work.
Okay.
I'm currently actually writing a post about that, so it's very fresh on my mind. Facebook ads that I use are very big. They give me about a 20% return on investment, which means if I spend $100, I'll make 120 a month.
Okay.
Which is brilliant. But it doesn't exactly sustain you.
Mm-hmm.
Marketing services is supposed to give you a much better return on investment, or ROI as it's called, a much better ROI. But you need to use a lot of keywords, and you need to use a lot of ads. So people need to take one ad that's doing fairly well and clone it, copy.
Okay.
And that way you can scale it up.
Okay.
For the day.
And so you're given statistics on which ads through these resources,
right, yes.
So that you are able to track all of the things that you're doing on what's working and what isn't working for you.
Even more importantly, yes, but even more importantly, I've got this what I call call to arms, which is a survey, an online survey that's been running 2 years now, and I'm asking people to share their experience with various ways of marketing, book marketing. So you've got the good marketers and the bad marketers, if you like, and the ugly marketers, I suppose. I haven't seen any pictures, so I can't really say. But anyway, and then I have graphs every year, and I publish them and I say, okay, this year, these guys have been the best to promote with. And these guys, I'm sorry, but they're giving you any return on investment. and I score them. So one is you spend $40, you make 40 sales. You sell 40 books. That's,
Okay.
it's buck for sale, essentially. And I score different promoters based on that particular graph. So if you go to my website, you're going to be able to see that as well.
Excellent. So now let me ask you this. Are you, Nicholas, then offering marketing services to self-published authors as well? Or has it been something that you might have considered to maybe do?
I have considered and I have offered marketing. I do offer marketing services, yes.
Excellent.
Which can be either consultancy, so you can, I can give you a few pointers online, like we're talking right now, or I can help steer you in the direction of that you need to go to, depending on what you've written. I mean, if you've written one book, I'm just going to say one thing: don't market. Keep writing.
Keep
Until
writing.
at least 3 books. That's the minimum, as far as I'm concerned, before you can run a successful marketing campaign.
That's very interesting. The power of 3 works in a lot of different areas, but to hear it in this respect, in the terms of you have written 3 books and now you begin your marketing. This would be crucial to someone who just gets their manuscript all done, ready to go, publishes it on Amazon, and they're hoping that this one book is going to just take off. And a lot of times that doesn't happen, and especially if they have a very small niche of an audience, depending on the genre. So I think that that is a really, really important tip, and I appreciate you sharing that. Now let me ask you one more thing. How can our viewers contact you to obtain consultant work from you? And then the separate, maybe you have them differentiated, and a separate way to contact you to purchase your books.
Well, they can purchase my books on Amazon, but the easiest way to do both things is to go to my blog, which is Nicholas Rossis with a CH, nicholasrossis.me. And if you go there, you can have access to all my marketing tips, and it's all free. I believe very much in sharing. And if you use my contact form, I'm available for whatever you need. Or if you go into my books section, you have access to all of my books, and you can just click and buy on Amazon. So it's very easy to contact me and find me online. Always
Excellent.
available.
Yes, and you're on social media as well, Facebook, Twitter, and yes.
And I do share, I believe so much in the power of sharing that this is the funniest thing. I've written a book with writing beats. Beats are these small actions that we use to prepare a dialogue. So instead of going, "Hi, Rebecca, how are you? Fine." We're going to say, "Rebecca blinked, comma, surprised, fine." And that gives you some information about what other person is feeling. Okay, so that's called a beat. And I've written a book that's essentially a compilation of thousands of these beats, depending on what emotion you want to portray. Because people say, "Sure, yeah." So you're not supposed to tell Rebecca was surprised. No, you can't say that nowadays. It's not very unfashionable and trendy. But you have to
trendy.
say,
Yes.
Rebecca blinked, comma, surprised. So that's how you do the beat. So
I like that. I like that. You've incorporated some of the trendier things that people have used in texting and other modes of communication in this digital age, and taken it to a whole new. I need a copy of this one myself, because that's essentially in ways that I write a little bit different, but I think that those kinds of beats would definitely be very, very applicable for me. I want to thank you for being a guest on the show today, and I also want to thank you for all of you who have been watching, and we ask that you tune in and share our show. This is Rebecca with Rebeeca Sounds Reveille.